Standard 8, Characteristics and Distribution of Earth's Ecosystems. The image that you're seeing in front of you on this slide is a map of world ecosystems. What we see here are 9 primary ecosystems on the planet: tropical rainforest, grasslands, deserts, deciduous forests, tundra, coniferous forests, chaparral, savanna, and alpine. Of those 9, we can find about 5 of them in the United States. The geographically informed person needs to understand the spatial distribution, or where are the various ecosystems on the planet, how ecosystems function, and how we can maintain and preserve the various ecosystems. Further, what we really need to understand is how human beings have both intentionally and inadvertently modified or changed these ecosystems. An ecosystem is comprised of both living and non-living resources. For example, plants and animals, waterways, geologic formations, soil types, and so on live and interact together. These populations of different plants and animals are called a community. On this slide you see a picture of the Sonoran Desert National Monument. It's a great example of a desert landscape plant and animal community. Here in the Sonoran Desert, we see a variety of biological, scientific, and historic resources within a functioning desert ecosystem. The Sonoran Desert National Monument encompasses nearly 500,000 acres, and it was established in January 2001 by presidential proclamation. The monument's diverse plant communities include plants and animals such as saguaros, creosote bushes, agave, and other succulents, as well as a wide variety of wildlife like desert bighorn sheep, mountain lions, desert tortoise, and over 200 species of birds. All of Earth's ecosystems interacting together is called the biosphere, or the planet. Within an ecosystem, 3 other components of the physical environment interact and are interdependent on one another: the atmosphere, or the air, the hydrosphere, or the water resources, and the lithosphere, the Earth's resources. Ecosystems form distinct regions on Earth's surface, and they vary in size and in shape and complexity. Ecosystems also exist at a variety of scales. They can vary from very small, like the small-scale garden ecosystem that you see at the top of this slide, or they could be a single stand of oak trees or a clump of xerophytic grasses in the desert. On a larger scale, they can also be precise geographic boundaries, like a pond ecosystem, a desert biome or ecosystem, an island, or a beach. Larger scale ecosystems can form continent-wide belts, such as the tundra, the taiga, and the steppe of northern Asia. The largest ecosystem is the planet itself, the biosphere. Noted in an earlier slide were 9 important biomes on the planet. Those major biomes, forests, grasslands, and deserts, can be continually broken down into smaller and smaller subunits to take into consideration the coast and water currents, the atmosphere and various air currents, physical location on the planet, and so on. When we break down the map of the United States into its major bioregions or biomes, we can count about 25 different subregions. Latitude and amount of precipitation are 2 major determinants of a biome. Elevation works similarly to latitude in this case. So as we look at this graph on this slide, we see three distinct biomes in Arizona. As if we were moving north from the valley toward Flagstaff, we'll pass through three distinct biome regions. The lower Sonoran Desert, where we live here in the valley. As we move toward Flagstaff, we'll pass through dry woodlands and chaparral, and similarly, once we were to leave Flagstaff and continue driving north to Page, we'd pass through again dry woodlands and chaparral as we come down in elevation. The third biome that we'd encounter in Arizona is the boreal forest. As we move up toward Flagstaff and toward the San Francisco peaks, we'll see more boreal forest vegetation. This slide is showing Minnesota's ecosystems. Unlike Arizona, Minnesota is not a mountainous state. However, even so, we see three main ecosystems in Minnesota. We see prairies, we see deciduous woods, and we see northern coniferous forests. This landscape variation is caused by differences in climate and precipitation from north to south. As the ecosystems change, so too does the flora and fauna of the state. All of these ecosystems have been altered dramatically since human settlement began here. The prairie landscape has been especially affected. As we have terrestrial or land-based ecosystems, we also have aquatic or water-based ecosystems. The slide on this page describes the Wolf Lake Aquatic Ecosystem Restoration Project. Wolf Lake is located on the northwest edge of Hammond, Indiana, and the far southeast edge of Chicago, Illinois. The land covers over 450 acres in Indiana and has a maximum depth of about 18 feet. The ecosystem degradation problem in Wolf Lake includes the proliferation of exotic plant species, low diversity of plant and fish species, a lack of adequate water depth, poor aquatic habitat, negative impacts from contaminants, and shoreline erosion. The proposed project features include creating approximately 25 acres of new aquatic and wetland habitat plantings, also restoring approximately 5,000 feet of shoreline, creating deep holes to locally diversify the lake bottom, controlling aquatic and shoreline exotic and undesirable plant species using herbicides and biological controls, clearing channels, and creating openings in dikes and causeways to restore natural water levels in the project area. So, as we can see, an ecosystem is a complicated thing. Looking more closely, we can break this down from a desert ecosystem, including the plants and the animals, the flora and fauna, the water, and the geology, all the various physical and natural components of Arizona and the Sonoran Desert. Then we need to add the human element, the city, the agriculture, the growth, the dams that we put in place, and all of the other actions that humans take on the land. From there, then, we can see that all elements of the environment, both physical and human, are part of several different but nested ecosystems. In ecological terms, the physical environment can be seen as an interdependent web of production and consumption cycles. Ecosystems are self-regulating open systems that maintain flows of energy and matter. Ecosystems naturally move toward maturity, stability, and balance in the absence of major disturbances. Ecosystems are dynamic and ever-changing. In fact, if you change something in one ecosystem or in one part of an ecosystem, you see ripples throughout other ecosystems with varying degrees of impact. Thus, the web of ecological interdependency is fragile and needs to be maintained. One way to understand the functioning of an ecosystem is to understand the various solar-powered cycles that drive the Earth. In this slide, we're looking at the hydrologic cycle. We can see various pools or storage units of water, like lakes, like rivers, like aquifers or other underground storage units. This water cycles through the Earth and back into the atmosphere and down and through Earth again. Like all of the various cycles, they keep regenerating themselves. Plants provide the energy to keep animals alive, either directly through consumption or indirectly through their death and decay into the soil, where the resultant chemicals are taken up by new plants. Soil keeps plants and animals alive, and it works to cleanse water. The root systems of plants and the mechanical and chemical effects of water percolating through the bedrock creates new soil layers. Ecosystems therefore help to reduce chemicals needed by living things to survive. They redistribute waste products. They control many of the pests that cause diseases in both humans and plants. And ecosystems offer a huge pool of resources for humans and other living creatures. In addition to the water cycle, we also look at the nutrient cycle, the carbon cycle, and the energy cycle. All of these cycles are critical to the functioning of ecosystems. Each one of our ecosystems is subject to change, and each one is vulnerable. The stability and balance of ecosystems is altered by large-scale natural events such as El Niño, volcanic eruptions, fire, drought, and so on. And perhaps more importantly, ecosystems are drastically transformed by human activities. Balance is a key concept in understanding how human intervention can work to restore the overproduction and overuse disruptions we have caused in the global ecosystem. The picture you see on this slide is a truck riding away from the Dust Bowl conditions in the 1930s in the Great Plains states. This slide is showing us a picture of mangroves. A mangrove is a sub-ecosystem within a greater tropical ecosystem. It's both coastal and aquatic, as well as terrestrial. The benefits of mangroves on the tropical ecosystem are great. They prevent erosion. They provide habitat for both terrestrial as well as aquatic animals. And they provide shade, again, for both terrestrial as well as aquatic animals. However, mangroves are in danger of being lost due to unsustainable coastal use practices. The image on this slide is the Florida alligator. The disappearance of mangroves and the biodiversity of southern Florida is clear when we look at the number of organisms that depend on the mangrove. The intricate level of the food web in the mangrove forest is apparent when we began considering the role of fungi, bacteria, and algae. For example, when leaves drop from the mangrove trees, they are decomposed by the fungi and the bacteria. This decomposed matter then runs into the estuary. The decomposed matter then acts as a food source for life, such as shrimp, crabs, and fish. About 75% of the game and 90% of the commercial fish in southern Florida are dependent upon mangrove forests. Mangrove forests of southern Florida also provide habitat for a variety of fish. These forests also act as hatcheries, nurseries, feeding grounds, and daytime refuge to many fish. The role in the life of the fishes exists partially because of the high amount of nutrients found in the water around the mangroves due to their leaf fall. Mangroves also serve as habitat for many other species such as birds, reptiles, crustaceans, and mollusks. Another ecosystem in the United States that's far flung from the Florida mangroves is ANWR, the Alaskan National Wildlife Refuge. ANWR is located very close to some known petroleum accumulations. It's been put in the public light recently, and there's a lot of public debate and controversy about drilling in this unique wildlife area. Yet another example of a unique ecosystem region in the United States is along the Gulf Coast. The map on this page shows us the population density of the states around the Gulf Coast region. This slide of the Gulf Coast is from a map from a New York Times article about the BP oil spill in the Gulf of Mexico. If you go to the New York Times interactive article about the oil spill, you'll see that the image on this slide has a dot in the place the oil spill originated. At the website, click on the arrow and watch as the oil spill throughout the Gulf increasingly grows larger and larger and larger. Time will tell what the impacts of the BP oil spill will be on the Gulf Coast. The map on the left shows us a regional breakdown of the Sonoran Desert. The picture on the right-hand side of this slide is showing us people on a butte in the Sonoran Desert trying to eradicate an invasion of non-native species that threaten the Sonoran Desert ecosystem. Invasive species upset the natural balance of the unique Sonoran Desert as they disrupt other natural environments as well. By knowing how ecosystems operate and change, students are able to understand the basic principles that should guide programs for environmental management. Students can understand the way in which they are dependent on the living and non-living system of Earth for their survival. Knowing about ecosystems will enable students to learn how to make reasoned decisions, anticipate the consequences of their choices, and assume responsibility for the outcomes of their choices about the use of the physical environment. It is important that students become well informed regarding ecosystem issues so they can evaluate conflicting points of view on the use of natural resources. The degree to which present and future generations understand their critical role in the natural functioning of ecosystems will determine in large measure the quality of human life on Earth. Standard 8 was written and narrated by Beth Larson, Lecturer, School of Geographical Sciences and Urban Planning, Arizona State University, 2010.